Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Glendale's Mural Ordinance Community Meeting. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I am the City of Glendale's Principal Arts and Culture Administrator. We are incredibly excited that you're joining us here tonight as we shape the future of Glendale's first ever mural ordinance. The mission of the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission is to enrich the human experience, reinforce Glendale's identity and civic pride through arts and culture, and to recognize the importance of the arts to our quality of life and to the local economy. One of the primary ways in which we achieve this mission is to establish a mural ordinance and a complementing mural program, which focuses on inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Our goal for tonight is to hear from you, specifically regarding what you want to see in our community. Throughout tonight's discussion, we'd like to keep these intentions in mind as we establish Glendale as an arts and culture destination. Right now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Arlene Vidor, one of our Glendale Arts and Culture Commissioners, to share a few words.
Well, hi, everybody. On behalf of the members of the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission, I want to thank you all for attending this meeting. And I'd also like to acknowledge GLAC Director Schaefer and our consultant, Sarah Odenkirk, and especially Jennifer, our commission administrator, who works very hard on our behalf. During the development of the Urban Art Plan, which was adopted by City Council in 2018, the public expressed interest in the vitality and visual enrichment that an active mural program could provide to our city. And that interest is reflected in the plan's goals. So we're now moving forward, and we really welcome your input tonight. So we hope you'll all participate, and I'll turn it back to Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Vidor. Right now, I'm very, very excited to introduce Sarah Conley Odenkirk, who's a partner at, I forgot the name of your firm, Sarah. My apologies.
You can just say CDAS.
CDAS, I knew it was CDAS, and I forgot the acronym. I had a temporary brain lapse. Thank you, Ben. So I'm gonna pull up the screen, and actually, you know what, I'll pull up the screen later, Sarah, but if you'd like to go ahead and jump in, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure, I just have a very few thoughts to share since Jennifer, I think you really have a good handle on this evening's conversation. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm a partner at Cowan Debates Abrahamson Shepherd, which is why she couldn't remember the full name. And my area of focus has been for quite a number of years now, fine art, and specifically in the public art arena. So I was really honored when Jennifer called me to bring me in to help consult on the development of a new murals policy. And I think the discussion ended up very quickly getting bigger than maybe Jennifer or anybody else in the Department of Arts and Culture expected. One of the things I wanted to just point out before we get started with the conversation is something that I think people oftentimes don't necessarily think about before paying attention to some of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight, which is that, and I'm sure you all know, public art is a very important part of communities. It's a great way for communities to develop identity and create community within neighborhoods and within the city in general. This is really, you know, murals are a wonderful way to contribute to the overall public art plans. Murals tend to be a little bit more of an affordable way to bring in art to a community and allow for not only more participants, but also a greater number of pieces. And this often brings to mind the issue of public art in general. So I'm sure as people drive down the street, you often see different, whether it's installations of sculpture or murals or other art that's you know, scattered throughout Glendale and other cities as well. And one of the issues is that people don't think about where that's funded from, where the funding comes from in order to place that public art into those locations. We just see things and think they're great or not so great and have kind of an aesthetic, visceral reaction rather than understanding that these projects could be coming from federal programs, state programs, local programs, private developers, or private initiatives through the citizens in that community. So there are a lot of different ways that public art gets into our community. So given that, you know, we want to make sure that we think very carefully about how we structure programs within the city. And as Jennifer and I talked through a number of the issues that come up when figuring out how to develop a new murals policy, we realized that there were some questions that really needed to be answered by the community before we could really move forward. So the idea tonight is certainly not to make any decisions, not to do anything dramatic, but to really reach out and just sort of take the temperature of people in the community and find out what people's thoughts are about murals in general. And Jennifer will go through a number of questions, very simple questions for tonight. And those questions will help inform where the conversation goes next. I think that what's really important tonight is to just keep our eye on the considerations around inclusivity, as Jennifer mentioned in her introduction. And what we're trying to do is craft something that allows for the most access. We want to end up with a process that is, of course, careful, but also includes as many people as possible and makes the whole access to public art something that is really truly for the people of the city of Glendale. So with that, I will pass it over to Jennifer so she can share her wonderful slides and questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation. Bear with me. Okay, I think everyone can see this, right? So I'm going to go through the slides. Okay, so this was our agenda. So basically what I wanted to do as we get started, thank you, Sarah, so much for providing that overview of tonight's vision, but really wanted to share, first and foremost, the current mural review process for the city of Glendale. So this on the screen is the Glendale Municipal Code, specifically section 3047, which is under design review. Under this municipal code, specifically section F, is mural review authority, which assigns the Arts and Culture Commission to approve murals within the city. And specifically section G are the mural review standards, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if you're interested in learning more about the Glendale Municipal Code, the link is on the screen. So this is just a screenshot overview of the current process in which murals are reviewed. It takes approximately 2 to 3 months for murals to be approved within the city. Once an artist and a property owner are match made per se, the first step is to receive a letter of authorization from the building owner, which will need to be accompanied when step 2, the applicant fills out a design review mural application. Step 3 would be to establish a public hearing notice mailing, and that consists of a very simple postcard mailing that we have with the city that's a template, and the applicant would fill it out, send it back to us, and as part of that, we also request that the applicant reach out to a preparer who has a list of property owners within the area and a radius map, in order to send out the public hearing mailing notice to at least a radius of 500 feet within the actual location of the mural, proposed mural. Step 4 would be to submit a radius map and a digital rendering, which are very simple to do within a 500-foot radius, and also a map of the actual location. And step 5 would be a public hearing notice sign, which would actually be on the property, and that needs to take place and be put into place, I should say, at least 10 days prior to the public hearing. Once we're at the public hearing, the applicant is invited to attend the public hearing. The commission will review the various parameters and details the artist that are associated with the application. And then the final step is a record of decision, which is the literal voting of how the commission has voted on the proposed mural. As part of the public hearing, specifically, as we mentioned before, Glendale Municipal Code section 304740G, these are the 5 standards in which the Arts Culture Commission are approving the mural. So the first standard is mural shall not constitute any form of commercial advertisement. Number 2 is mural shall not contain any obscenity. Number 3 is mural shall not cause the removal of required landscaping. Number 4, mural must be durable and capable of being well maintained. And number 5, mural shall be located on existing walls. So those are the 5 standards in which the commission is reviewing murals. We also wanted to share a really wonderful example of a current municipal mural program with the City of West Hollywood. Their current process takes approximately 1 month for murals to be approved within the city, and the way that they've structured their program is specifically regarding a muralist roster. So artists are invited to apply to be on the muralist roster. I believe that the applications for artists are reviewed biannually. Once artists are on the muralist roster, they're on for approximately 2 years. If a property owner is interested in having a mural located on their property, they would just go to the muralist roster, and it's basically a matchmaking process. And that's a relatively easy, straightforward process that makes it super accessible and easy for both the muralist and the property owner to kind of matchmake and have that mural expedited. So now I'm actually gonna open up the screen here. And this is the time where we'd like to start the community input discussion. So one of the first questions that we have, and this is the moment in which, before I get started, I'm actually going to take Arlene's cue. And if you feel comfortable, we'd love to just introduce yourself briefly, just so that we know who's in the room and we can get a sense of what the thoughts are on the community members that are here. So if you feel comfortable, please feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stephen Meek, and I am the president of the Adamsville Neighborhood Association and also on the Parks and Community Services Commission.
Thank you, Stephen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Goreski, and I am the property owner along with my brother Ben, who's also on this call. We're at 1833 through 1851 Victory Boulevard, right at the edge of Glendale and Burbank there. And we have murals on our building, and we've been having issues with the city about them. So that's why we're kind of here to get some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Hello.
Hi, Jared.
Hi. My name is Jared Weiss. I am an artist living in Glendale. I've previously painted one of the utility boxes. And yeah, I just wanted to see what was going on with this proposition.
Thank you, Jared.
Hi, everyone. This is Ben Goretsky, Alex's brother, as introduced. I think pretty much Alex has kind of told you our background here. Yeah, and we're just, we've been having problems with our murals since we put up the first one. We've, in terms of approvals and all that, we've gone through it all and then some. And, we have some amazing murals, or we think they're amazing murals, from some world-renowned artists on our walls. And we're hoping that we can save them from being destroyed, which is our main goal for being here. So hopefully we can talk about that.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kalika. I'm a senior at Glendale High School, and I'm trying to find ways that my VAPA program could create murals around the city.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Hi, my name is Myrna Gutierrez, and I'm an artist living here in Glendale, and I'm really interested in street art. And actually, over the pandemic, I traveled around the world doing urban art tours through Airbnb online experiences, so I got hooked.
Thank you. Thank you, Myrna.
Hello. Hello, my name is Sarbuhi Abajan. I'm an artist living in Glendale. I'm really interested in public art. I did public art projects in Glendale. I want to learn more about murals. Thank you.
Thank you, Saruhi.
Hi, I'm Corey Siegel, and I'm the executive director at the Museum of Neon Art. And I want to see more art in Glendale. I want to see initiatives led by the community. I think it would make the city just even more special than it already is. And I think that if, by being involved as a community member, I think we can make a really responsive policy that it enables a lot of diverse artists to participate.
Thank you, Corey. I think we just have a few folks. Tracy and Vilma.
Hi, I'm the public arts intern, so I'm here to learn more about the mural process in general and also, yeah, the proposition.
Thank you, Tracy. Great, thank you so much for introducing yourselves. I really appreciate seeing who's in the room. I'm gonna pull back up my PowerPoint, which was our first question that we'd like to propose to this group, which is what kind of murals would you like to see? And these are some examples of actually murals that are in Glendale, but we're really looking to see what constitutes in your vision of a good mural, a bad mural, what are kind of some imagery that you'd like to see within the city? And please, anyone feel free to jump in.
First of all, can I ask a separate question tied into this? You mentioned that you are looking to do murals to build on the identity of Glendale. What would you define the identity as Glendale? And then maybe from that, we could, launch on murals that promote that kind of identity.
Sure. Commissioner Vidor, would you like to share what your version of identity of the Glendale is?
Well, that is a very interesting question. The identity of Glendale and how it would be reflected in a mural program, I think, as Ms. Siegel said, is to involve the community in mural programs to make sure that there is enough publicity that the people in the city who live here and are interested in public art know about the program and are informed about it, and then they actively participate in the program. I think I'm a firm believer that it's always good to have interaction with fellow municipalities and to not be insular. And so I personally do not believe that our identity should be strictly related to art that would be produced by artists who live in Glendale. I think there should be open competition for calls for murals or for positions on the mural roster, and that it should reflect a diverse array of individuals who understand and either live or work in Glendale. So I think the diversity of the mural roster, the openness of the calls, and the input of the public is really important. But it would be hard for me to say what the identity of Glendale is other than a growing and very changing and expanding diverse community whose makeup is changing all the time. But that's my narrow view of the world, and I wonder what other people think is the identity of Glendale. I don't see it as any one particular thing, like we all love to do something or we all come from some particular place. I think there's a very rich mixture of interests and demographics here, and hopefully the mural program, when it exists, will reflect many different things. So I don't know whether that's sounds like a solid answer or not, but off the top of my head, that's it.
I think that's a wonderful answer, Commissioner Vidor. I think that's, it really raises actually a very interesting question, which is how one curates public art within a community. And so the original question I think that Myrna asked, in terms of identity, what I would encourage people to think about is how public art can serve a whole lot of different purposes. So it can be something that is brought to the table by the people who live within the community. And again, public art can really serve as a powerful way of communities coming together and creating their own identity. But it also, in some cases, is the only way that some people will see art from other places in the state, in the country, in the world. And so it's very important to have that mix of both locally grown and international view of artwork. And at least from my perspective, that I like to encourage that people think about the different ways that public art can serve a lot of different perspectives. It doesn't have to necessarily all be toward one particular set of values or identity.
One thing I'd like to mention is I've heard on occasion, and I won't get into any specifics or details. You know, there are many people who live in Glendale, and this speaks to the public outreach and the need for good public relations. I think there are people in Glendale who might be a little fearful of murals and what they represent, that, you know, wherever it is on a wall, wherever it's, you know, that not all murals are beautiful and benign in the way that you just pass them by and go, oh, that's pretty. Sometimes they are conveying a message. Sometimes they have a feel to them, which may cause you to have certain feelings. And they may spark conversation, and the conversation might be quite animated. And I think that the onus is on us to make sure that we educate the public about what mural programs are, their potential, what they can do for the community, and to not, you know, if they have fears or worries about it, to express themselves and, you know, be welcomed into the conversation. So.
Thank you. I think those are really wonderful points. And Jennifer, I'm actually going to suggest that maybe you run through all of the questions that you have. It's not that many questions, but that perhaps different questions will bring up different comments and thoughts from the people here, rather than going through one by one. It might be a better way to get everybody engaged.
Thank you for that recommendation. I'm trying to multitask 3 roles right now. So I think what I'll do, like you said, I'll go through the questions, and then I'm actually going to not share the screen so that I can keep track on the chat. So this was the first question we had proposed. What kind of murals would you like to see? The second question is, do you want to see murals allowed on private property? And these are some examples. The third question that we wanted to propose is, do you want to see murals in residential neighborhoods? So these are examples of a mural on a multi-family home, a residential home, I'm sorry, a single family home, and then also an apartment building. How do you feel about murals in other locations? So these are examples of asphalt murals specifically that are on crosswalks and intersections within cities. There's also basketball courts and other various locations, skate parks, as other locations for potential murals. The next question we had is, what do you think should happen if a community does not like a mural? Which is a very interesting question that we would like to hear your feedback on in regards to processes. And then the last question that we had, which can also be done via chat, is if you wanted to install a mural on your property, please rank in order of importance, cost, speed, and oversight. So I will just exit this and then kind of open up the conversation as Sarah had suggested.
Is it, if you were a business owner and you wanted to install the mural, it's how much it would cost to get it through council and how many steps it would be to do that? And then the other one was cost, oversight, and time. Okay, cost, speed, and oversight. So is that all related to how the process of getting it approved?
I would specifically in regards to, like you're saying, if you were a property owner, what would be the list of importance, the rank of importance? So in sharing those conversations, oh, Jeremy, were you going to say something? I saw your lips move.
You're looking for feedback on any of these questions that right now, is that where we're at?
Correct, and that's mainly to start a conversation.
Cool. To clarify to Corey, as I understood oversight, it was artistic and aesthetic oversight on the type of mural you might want. On a personal anecdote, I love the idea of including more murals in public private spaces. The photos you shared look beautiful, and I think it benefits our community to have more art up. I think it, I have 2 young kids, so we love standing in front of the murals and taking pictures, so it becomes a kind of community spot. I think because of that, then people feel more comfortable going out and about, which is definitely something that we're looking for, I imagine, in Adams Hill. So I'm all for it, all the first few questions you said. And in terms of the discussion questions, I guess I'll wait for the rest of the group to answer the first few.
I like what Jeremy said about taking pictures in front of murals. What comes to mind is Venice. And if we want to make Glendale a destination, an art destination, having murals that are Instagram friendly in some areas is conducive to putting Glendale on the map, because people, hashtag it and people get to know Glendale as, well, let's go to Glendale for the, take pictures. And like I see that in the Artist District on Sunday afternoons, all the Instagram influencers are there with selfies and posing. So that's one thing. And I like Vilma's suggestion about murals in the underpass as a way to encourage different kinds of activity in those areas. And the third point that I noticed is I saw how West Hollywood has that 1 month process. And if we want to make, again, artists and Glendale the artist destination, it would be conducive to making it an easier process. It seems like what I saw with the Glendale process, it's more cumbersome than a West Hollywood or maybe even Venice. So that's something, that I hope Glendale would consider, is maybe facilitating the process. Because artists, you know how artists are. So to put through all those hoops, I think we want to make it as artist friendly as possible, I would think.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the idea of the underpasses and stuff, because there was something I had proposed back. We had that Arts Council meeting in like January or February of 2020 before COVID. So obviously nothing really progressed from there. But for instance, near where I live, there's the tunnel that goes into Fremont Park. And that tunnel is not very well lit because people have graffitied over the light bulbs over the years. And I see that, on occasion, like somebody has gone in and repainted the walls, but it's constantly getting re-graffitied over. And I would like at some point in the decade that I lived here to see that, get better lighting so that people don't have the comfort to go and just graffiti all the time, but also just make it more welcoming and, maybe make that like a tunnel that is an art space that is well lit, that, you could invite, street artists to produce something in there where it's, a properly curated space for it and less for vandalism. And, it wouldn't be dedicated to just one artist. You could segment it, have it to be, fully collaborative, since it is a decent stretch of wall. But yeah, that's like the place I always think about in Glendale, where it's like, I would not want to go there at night, but maybe if it was lit and painted nicely, it might be more inviting for people to actually utilize that area and go to the park. Fremont Park is a beautiful park, and sometimes it feels like you don't know it's there because the access to it is kind of hidden or made to look a bit scary. So that's one of my proposals.
If I could get some put some input on that. As we mentioned, our building is located on Victory Boulevard, literally right on the cusp of where Burbank meets Glendale. And we're kind of last priority almost with the city because of our location. I mean, it's not really Americana or anything like that, or it's not very sought after neighborhood. When we purchased our building, there was a lot of shenanigans going on in the back, from drug dealing to prostitution to anything and everything you can possibly think of. And my brother and I, we put a lot of time and effort and money into fixing up our building. And luckily it only took 8 years for us to get a sidewalk in front of the building. So that was nice. When we got the building, we completely renovated it and we created the walls. I'm sorry if you guys hear my kids screaming in the background, by the way. When we created these walls, I am very well tied into the artist community, and I said, look, you know, it would be amazing, you know, me visiting places like Wynwood in South Beach, Florida, where it's like they took a completely dilapidated community and a family decided that they were going to invite some of the best artists from around the world and make it a spot that everyone wants to visit, especially probably next week during Art Basel. I wanted to do the same thing in Glendale. And I said, we've got these walls and all we're doing is cleaning up the tagging every single month and paying the city to clean it up. And, you know, it would be a machine that would come out and spray water on the building and, you know, take off a layer of the concrete, and then you'd still see the tag in a way. And we're like, we got to do something. And the rules of the street art is like, you can't tag a mural, especially if it's a well-known street artist. And so we called, or I called on some of, you know, the people that I know in the community, and they said, yes, absolutely. And the tagging has stopped. And the Instagram posts have been phenomenal. And we get people from around the world visiting the murals because it's Tristan Eaton or Matt Gondek or Command Z or Deface from the UK or Kano, which is a local artist. I mean, these are well-known artists from around the world, and people are coming to the city of Glendale to take pictures with these murals. And that's, I would love to see more of that. And that was the reason why we did it. And it's heartbreaking because the response that we've been getting so far from the city is, all you've done is broken laws and you've done nothing good for us. And all we do is to show them the positive feedback that we've been getting from the art community, and they just seem to ignore it. So I definitely hope that whatever outcome we get from this, that we can fix at least that.
Well, I think I'll just say, if can I interject in here, Jennifer? Is, you know, Glendale, obviously we want to change very much, and the commission, you know, we have our marching orders in the form of the urban art plan, which, you know, I don't know if anyone wants to take the time to read it. Maybe, you know, at bedtime, if you're an insomniac, you could try to go through the whole thing, but it absolutely does talk about murals. And that was based on a lot of input we got when we were putting the plan together. There was a huge outreach program during the formation of the Glendale Urban Art Program. And one of the things that we were concerned about, I think, was that Glendale had a legacy. I mean, you know, you have to kind of confront your past and reckon with it. And we had a legacy of actually defining murals legally in the city code as graffiti at one point, as tagging, vandalism, actually. So, you know, we're not there anymore. I think there is, you know, there are quite a few murals around. Some of them are rogue murals or street murals. Some of them were approved. And, you know, I've run around and photographed many of them, and they exist. So we're moving forward, but you know, we have to kind of break out of that mindset. And I think, again, you know, it's like a broken record. That's where the publicity and the PR comes in, the educating the public, and also educating the other departments within the city and our city council. Like, everybody has to get on board and understand what the value of a mural program is, because there's still many people around, most likely, who think of it in the old way because they haven't caught up with what's going on today. And, you know, I'm personally very interested in, the commission is very interested in that, in communicating with and educating the public, and using the help of all the good people on this call to help us with that and to be part of that. Because your voice is, you know, I don't know if anybody in the audience is anti-mural. It looks like this is a pretty mural-friendly crowd of people who really want this program to take off. But your voice is in the face of concern and fear, as I had mentioned, which exists. They're really valuable to have your voices. So hopefully we can move forward and do a lot of communicating.
I'd like to throw my 2 cents in also. I can see murals in many different places. I think a start was what we had at the Verdugo Park skate park. That was a nice touch. I'd like to see more of that sort of thing in the parks, whether it be a basketball court or the side of a building in a park could also be a good site. I myself have thought about, I'm going to call them hidden staircases that are around the city. I know of one that we have in Glendale that very few people know about that I think would be a great spot to do a waterfall or some sort of scene going down there. I do believe that the process should be very organized and curated. We don't want just somebody who says, oh, I think I can do something and paint a stick figure. We want something that will be attractive to the general public. These murals could be in residential neighborhoods. I just think it needs the neighborhood itself to be behind it. Cost is a factor, but at the same time, sometimes cost is worth it to get something better. So I would go for stairways. That Fremont Park tunnel has been a dark shadow for decades. And I think that would be another place that would be a good start. And after they redo Fremont Park, they could add a mural to that building. Okay, that's all I have for this time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jennifer,
Stephen. Oh, yes.
Could you maybe, without getting into too much into the detail, some of the questions that we're considering here, could you talk about what, in the highest level terms, how West Hollywood handles it, since they're our role model, more or less?
That is a tall order. I know West Hollywood has a very, very fantastic program. Maybe Sarah, do you have a better idea of how West Hollywood would handle some of the questions proposed?
Well, I think West Hollywood is definitely in a slightly different position in that it's a bit more of a homogenous community. And so they've been able to come up with some very strong statements about what the community represents and what it is, what values they want to put out there. And so it makes it a little bit easier in terms of coming up with policies and decision-making processes. That said, I will say that they've really put forward, that they're very positive about art. They really have made that part of their identity and part of what they want to do in every aspect of how they're running they have art on the outside, their whole urban art program. I would definitely see them as a model in terms of how they've streamlined the process. They do have an artist roster. I think Jennifer mentioned that initially in her introduction as something that might be interesting for Glendale to look at as well. It's one way of sort of pre-approving artists who can get the job done and have experience as muralists. And so that's certainly one thing that could be considered. I think, and again, West Hollywood's one place to look at. There are many other communities as well that have done an excellent job of bringing murals in particular into their community. Tucson, Arizona has done a whole campaign. In fact, that was, I think, one of the first things that we talked about when we started looking at the murals issue here, was that it didn't just have to be on walls. It should be, in the streets or on sports courts or in skate parks or on tunnels or, wherever else. So, so those are all important things to think about, and we can certainly look to other communities to give some guidance. One thing I would say, though, it does seem like everybody is very positive about murals and bringing more public art into the community, which is amazing and wonderful. I think it's a great place to start. But I think one thing that would be interesting to get some feedback on as well would be the downsides of whether it's public art in general or murals in particular, or things that people are concerned about. Because there's certainly going to be some pushback, whether it's with regard to content or bringing commercial interests in. and how exactly that is handled by the city, I think it would be very helpful to get people's thoughts on, you know, the difference between a sign and something commercial or advertising related versus, you know, what would truly qualify as art in your eyes.
This just kind of brings up, I used to live in Koreatown, and there was a big controversy last year because there was a mural on one of the buildings that was paying homage to the Coconut Grove restaurant, and it had kind of a sun with beams coming out, and you know, well-intentioned, but it ended up really looking like the Japanese flag and sort of traumatizing a lot of Koreans who lived in that vicinity. So I think there are some things that oftentimes, you know, an artist or someone out of context might be unaware of, that it is offensive or it has some sort of meaning or, you know, something like that. And some of it, you know, art, there is some elements to art where that is part of the function of it, that it's not going to make everyone happy. But then there's some other aspects where kind of polling a community of people, or like even having like a preview of what it would look like on the building, could maybe have enabled some people to voice their concern before it happened and kind of escape that that flub. But I think it is a very important thing to consider. I think another thing in terms of the positives of art and what Ben was talking to earlier is, you know, I work at the Museum of Neon Art, and oftentimes when people tell me, you know, oh yeah, like I go to like everyone knows the Americana and everyone knows Glendale as like LA's shopping mall. And that's great. But Glendale is so much more than that. And having murals be able to tell these community stories, be able to bring in well-known artists from across the world, I think it will signal to the community, the local government, that this city is more than just corporate interests, which I think, you know, I understand why that is a value. And, you know, it has done a lot for Glendale, but there's so much more that we need to emphasize as a community what we stand for. And murals can do a great job at that. And they can also drive way more visitors, and, you know, even thinking on the economic level. And the example made of Miami and the street art there, it can be a real driving factor for tourism and for culture.
Yeah, I think whenever you deal with street art, you sort of have to buckle your seatbelt and know that you're going to expose yourself to potential discussions around the art. But perhaps a way to buffer some of the impact would be to involve cultural, political, or religious diversity in the decision-making process, people who can speak into things that one group may not have, you know, perspective on, like what Corey was talking about. You know, maybe that artist had no idea, but if there had been somebody involved in that process who could say, hey, you know, that doesn't work in this town, in this community, that could have helped to educate the artist. So yeah, I think it just comes with the art scene, the street art. And actually, street art it is sort of geared toward provoking discussion, you know, like Bansky or Obey. That's their brand.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, that's a good point. And maybe, and I'm thinking out loud here, and Jennifer's probably going to go, oh, Arlene, you know, shut up. But maybe we, you know, show when we get into a situation where we show movies like Obey Giant and, you know, the movie that JR made, which I now can't think of the name of, where he went around with, the filmmaker whose name I can't remember either.
Is it
Sorry.
Exit? Are you thinking about Exit Through the Gift Shop?
Well, Exit Through the Gift Shop is another great one, but no, this is the one that the street artist JR did with the French New Wave director who recently died, where he went from town to town and he involved the community in street art and created. He did it with wheat paste. That's how he works. And if some of you remember Ara Oshagan's piece, Tell Me, which he did on the Central Library in Glendale, where that was a collaboration with JR, where he had huge portraits of Glendalians, and there were narratives that they talked about how they made their way to Glendale from wherever they're from. You know, could be the next town or it could be another country. And they were all over the street in front of the library and on the walls out peering out. And this was the type of project that JR did, where, you know, the community became part of the art project and things like that. You know, showing how successful and magical things like that have been in other communities and the types of conversations they provoke. There are a number of films that, you know, we certainly could show or encourage people to see that kind of put it in a broader context. You know, like we're part of the world, and in the world, these things happen. So, you know, and trompe l'oeil is another wonderful thing that people sometimes do. Some of it's a little gimmicky, I think, but sometimes it can be very engaging and alluring to people to be drawn to something that's tricking them visually. And I mean, there's so many things. And then there might be murals that are controversial because maybe they cause a little bit of discomfort, and, you know, getting people to lean into that, I think, is part of the challenge that we have, and speaks to what Sarah was just talking about, you know, like just engaging, getting everybody involved, and that it's okay to, you know, not everybody's going to agree about everything. We're a very diverse community, but it's okay to have the conversation.
Yeah, and to that, I'm wondering if people have any thoughts about the process for removing works that may be more than controversial. A lot of communities will have processes in place where if there's a certain amount of complaining that happens over a certain period of time, then it can come back before the council, and there can be a decision made to remove a mural. And I think that that's where we get into some of these more complicated questions of, you know, it's one thing to approve the mural, and then you find out that there is an issue with it. Is it just a few people who are being very loud about their complaints? Or is there some legitimate reason to object to a mural? And then what do you do? Because ultimately it does need to be, to some degree, up to the community what public art they're living with. So, like I say, some communities will have you know, a process where if there's a sustained number of complaints over, you know, a 2-year period, that it can then come before the commission or the council to be removed. And in the case of murals, oftentimes we're talking about things that are going to be much more temporary than 2 years. But, you know, thinking along those lines, does anybody have any thoughts about under what circumstances it would be legitimate to remove a mural, and maybe not for the obvious, like clearly either racist or homophobic or something that's going to be very, very much a hot button, but are there nuances that people can speak to in terms of what might justify the removal of a mural?
Well, I think also it's a very slippery slope, guys, because based on what we've seen, our very first mural was a mural that we put in the alleyway, and it was from an artist out of Nevada, Juan Muniz, and it was of his Nino bunny. It's literally a bunny and holding like a little sign that's, you know, this smiley face or something like that. And we got complaints because there were people that literally called the city and said, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a bunny. I don't know if it's this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's trying to say. So you have to be careful, because there will be people that just complain just to complain. And if you open that door and you open it wide enough, then you're not going to get any mural to go up. And then at the same time, restricting the artist to a certain extent will just have the artist walk from the actual project. We do have a mural which causes a little bit of controversy, and it's a mural by an Austrian artist by the name of Nichos. Nichos does murals which they're called dissection murals, in which he takes subjects and he actually exposes the insides of them. He's done murals all over the world, and when he came to us, he actually came from Austria to visit us when Tristan Eaton was doing his mural, because he was doing a fan and he found out that Tristan was putting up a mural. He came to visit and we convinced him to do a mural for us. He asked us what was near us when we showed him the wall, and we said, there's an equestrian center right next to us. And he goes, oh, I could do a horse. I could totally dissect a horse, and I can do a huge horse on this building, and it'll be the complete dissection of it. And I go, no way. You will have your head on a stick with this community if you show a dissected horse on this mural. And instead, the mural that we have right now is actually of a Spartan, and it's like Spartan bust, and you can see the insides, and it still causes a little controversy because it is the inside of the human head and all that, but it's his style. It's depends on who you ask. And some will find that extremely offensive, and some will be like, that is what's inside of all of us, and it's a beautiful imagery of it, and it's great. So you have to be very careful as to what exactly some people will consider offensive and what some people won't, because it can open a very wide open door, and then you just destroy the whole thing.
I think Myrna's suggestion of coming up with some kind of council addresses a number of these issues that have been brought up. Maybe there's and perhaps this is already something that exists. So if I'm speaking about something that already exists, excuse me, but maybe there's 15 to 20 key stakeholders that are people who, some of the people here, people who appreciate art, people who represent different culturally specific communities that are prevalent in Glendale, people that are out and about in the community. And then those 15 to 20 people are helping curate a list of artists that then are invited. Personally, I feel like once you get into wanting to see the art itself, it opens up, I don't know, it could be challenging. I love the idea of it, rather vetting the artists themselves, and then, that's a way of ensuring that overall you're going to appreciate the art, but you're giving a lot more liberty to what is put up. And I think speeds up the process and gives less control to people who aren't necessarily artists. And then that committee could also be, maybe once a year, they review everything, all the complaints that have come in. And, the 20 people kind of go visit any murals that arise to a certain level of alarm, whatever that may be. And then, every year they kind of vote on the 2 or 3 or whatever. Hopefully there's none that arise to that level. And then any other issue that needs to be addressed, like maybe this committee of 15 to 20 artists, key stakeholders, culturally specific community members that represent Glendale, Armenian, Mexican, whatever else, help determine all of these issues that are so hard to predict, I think is one of the things, as Corey pointed out, in regards to the Japanese flag appearing, so that way there's a regular review process and you have a group of people who are accountable. I have to go bathe my children now. Thank you for listening to me, and good to see you, Arlene and Stephen, and meet everyone else. Thank you,
We
everyone.
all live in the same neighborhood.
I think that a possibility here, especially in the downtown area, the city owns parking structures. And I've seen in Hollywood and other places where murals, they're downtown, in Hollywood, they were advertisements, but they're on very large vinyl canvases that stretch over the building, sometimes even around the corner of the building, and they cover 2 sides. We could do murals on the parking structure across from the central library that covers the whole side of the building, but it's temporary. and we could only be there for a few months. Or we could get an artist that happens to live in Germany or Paris to submit it, and we have it printed and hang it. That's something else that could be added to that as a temporary mural on a building that normally might not fit for a whole mural because of the openings for windows or air breathing and things like that. So that's something that I think we should consider.
Certainly, I think if you have, sorry.
I just wanted to get a clarification on something, the mural roster, which I guess happens in West Hollywood, and we're considering that. My understanding of a mural roster where we bring in artists into an approved list is not to judge their work at all. It would be that they're qualified muralists. They know about the paint, they know about the process, they know about the maintenance, they know how to execute a mural, but that we would not, the commission would in no way, shape, or form make a judgment about the person's work, unless they were a rank amateur and they couldn't do a mural to save their life. But you know, that this is their qualifications as a muralist. It's just an initial vetting. It's not judging the content of their work whatsoever.
Correct.
Okay.
And this happens in many communities where they'll put out a call for, and the county, LA County does this. And so this is a pretty regular process where you put out a call, people submit their materials, and then there's a committee that goes through and determines, you know, who qualifies based on a certain matrix that's put together beforehand. And what that does is it really helps in the process, especially when you're talking about allowing private property owners to put murals on their property. And this is something else that we've talked a little bit about, is that it makes sense to have some standards that are provided to property owners. So for instance, having that pre-qualified list of people who you're fairly certain are going to be able to execute something in a relatively professional manner, that's helpful so that you're not hiring, you know, the kid down the street and you end up with a disaster. But also providing some suggested documentation or forms, or at least some guidance in terms of it makes sense to have a written agreement so that, you know, that it's clear who holds the copyrights, or how long the mural is anticipated to be up, or, you know, anything that could potentially become an issue or a point of conflict between that property owner and the artist. Because ultimately, as I was saying at the beginning, you know, nobody really knows how most of the art that they see on the street is funded, and ultimately the city ends up hearing about all of it, regardless of who has funded it. So it's really important that the city provides that support and armature basically for community members who do want to be proposing artwork that's not coming through the arts and culture department.
Does that apply to if an artist was to come as a suggested artist through the property owner as opposed through the roster?
Yeah, I mean, generally there are ways to bring in other people. It's not to keep other people out. The idea really is just to help maintain a certain level of quality and reduce the number of conflicts that arise because of poor choices in bringing in people who say they can do something and they can't. So, you know, certainly it sounds like in your case you've made a lot of contacts and connections within the international street art community, and that's pretty exciting. That's a really interesting thing to be able to bring to a community. And it seems like, you know, this is the sort of positive thing that we want to figure out how the city can accommodate without, you know, you were talking about the slippery slope of removing murals. I think there's also the slippery slope of approving everything. So there has to be some middle ground of not impacting free speech and not impacting creative expression that's positive for the community, but also making sure that there are some rules around what is appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've completely curated the artists that are on our building, and some of it is just based on availability of the artist, whether they're in the United States or in the city, or, you know, whether they're doing another art show or here for the LA art show, or doing a gallery show, and then, you know, we hit up the representatives and request a possible mural to be made on our building during that time. And for the most part, we've gotten pretty lucky in getting the artists to agree. So, but yeah, we also would love to assist. Like, there are buildings next to us that constantly have the same problem that we had before, where they are getting tagged constantly and they're getting graffiti, actual graffiti. And we'd love to assist in, you know, expanding beyond our walls, even though it's just across the street. And we can accommodate things like, you know, the curation of actually very well-known artists that would love to contribute in this space. So, absolutely.
So one of the questions there would be, let's say you or somebody else in your neighborhood wants to have murals on their building. What should the process be that they go through in order to get that approved? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to either make the process so complex and overburdensome and expensive that people don't go through it and go around it and just do the unsanctioned murals. It's better to get people to go through a process where they can be sanctioned and therefore protected and supported. So trying to think through those things that would be most important to have in place to allow some oversight, but also make the process easy enough that people are willing to engage in that. So from your perspective, Ben, you know, could you speak a little bit, because it sounds like you didn't really go through the process, and that may be where the challenges came in. I don't know.
No, we went through the process. We went through the entire process multiple times. And we, you know, Alex especially knows, because he's been dealing especially with the monetary side of the process that the city put in place. But we wanted to go through it the way that the city wanted us to. You know, we were trying to play ball, a fair game as much as we could. We were told that we first need to highlight the walls that we would like murals on, which we did. We were then told that we were supposed to give a mock-up of how the murals would look on the walls, which is what we did. We also gave bios on every single artist that we were going to approach for the murals. At which point we told them, look, these are the artists that we're going after. Here's a couple of other artists that we would go after if these artists would not want to do it, or we could just not get them. So we went through that entire process. We were given guidelines such as, you know, no profanity, no nudity, no advertising. Completely understandable. And when we tell that to the artists, they completely understand that too. We were told that all the murals were supposed to be maintenanced, which after every single mural goes up on our building, we provide a highly protective UV coating on the mural so it doesn't fade over time, which is why our murals stay so well preserved. Some of them have been up already over 4 years and they still look fresh. You know, we were told that landscaping needs to be properly done around the mural, and if anything was cut or trimmed or anything, that we would either plant new landscaping around or anything, like to preserve the amount of trees. We've done everything in that nature. And yet, you know, we understand we still get complaints, and we've even had the sign go up in front of the building to tell people, you know, there would be a meeting to discuss the mural. And actually, the last time that we had a meeting with the city, the only person that showed up to that meeting to oppose us was an individual that was complaining about the mural because he parks his car in Glendale and then walks to his apartment building located in Burbank. Which kind of like why are you here? So we've gone through the process, which is what makes it so frustrating, that we do everything that the city requests and yet we still can't win.
So, you know, that's one of the purposes of having this this meeting this evening is to understand a little bit where the frustration points have been, and how that can be addressed in reassessing the policies and ordinances going forward. So that's very helpful to hear. And of course, I am not informed about your particular situation, but it would be interesting to know exactly where that got stopped and how that could be made to either go more smoothly or at least more predictably.
I'll tell you exactly where we are. We are right now, we literally received an email today, which is kind of advantageous that this meeting is happening today. We received an email today from the city saying that our, what is it, Alex? What is it called?
What happened is that specific mural by Nichols, that particular wall, the location of that wall was not submitted in the application approval process. So when you submit an application, you say, well, I want a mural here, 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 and here. And we missed that wall. And the artist chose that wall to put the mural on because that's the wall kind of behind the corner from Victory on Irving. And it's constantly getting tapped. So we had that mural put in there, but it was not within the realm of our application. We just simply did not include that wall while we included 5 other walls. So I guess the city found out about it because, this guy, Roger, he drives past our property every day to work. And he saw that mural there and he said, well, that wall is not approved. So you have to submit yet another application. So we submitted another application. We wait another 4 or 5 months. We get in front of the committee and they said, well, you were not supposed to put a mural there. And they were talking down to us like we were 5-year-old kids, stole a cookie from a cookie jar or something. And they said, you have to take the mural down. Boom, that's it. So now we have to take it down, but we filed an appeal. And that was like 1.5 years ago. And like Ben said, today we got an email from the city, from Roger, saying, I'm thinking of putting your appeal on the docket for January 25th. So I said, okay, 25th sounds good. So we kind of need to go to the city. It's some sort of an appeals court where we're going to plead our case not to take the mural down. But if we win, then we get to keep the mural that's in our building. If we don't, we would need to take down the Nichols mural.
And this is is this appeal in front of City Council? I'm not sure. Jennifer, do you know what the appeal process consists of? Who is going to be the judge on the appeal?
I have not been part of this process, and this is the first that I'm hearing of it. So I'd love to hear more information about this.
Yeah, I can forward you all kinds of emails that I have between us and the city. Now, mind you, everything got put on hold for a good 1.5 years. While the application for an appeal hearing is in process, the mural stays up. And then they had a guy named Tommy who was kind of enforcing the law, and he is the one who told me, look, you got to do something with the mural, otherwise I have to fine you each and every day for having that mural. So, and that appeal had to be filed 14 days after the city council said we have to take the mural down. It was just, we didn't know the process. We figured we submit an application for a mural. Our building is very block-like. We have like sections that that don't have any windows or doors. Stretching from Allen all the way down to Irving along Victory. So, these blocks on sections of our building, like 20 by 30 feet, which are perfect for murals. And we know a lot of people in our community that can put up this mural. Actually, we're working on another artist to put up a mural probably next month or so.
Well, it sounds like this is exactly the sort of situation that we need to be paying attention to so that there's a more predictable process and
And
something that.
the process is not very cheap. When you submit an application to put up a mural, that's almost like a $4,000 application. But then, if we go back to the PowerPoint presentation you were showing earlier today, there are certain segments you have to do, like send a mail notification to everyone in the neighborhood in a 500 feet radius, which means I had to buy a mailing list and hire a company who would do such mailings. Then, of course, the cost of postage. And then 10 days before the hearing, you have to put up a sign at every corner of your property, letting people know there's going to be a hearing. And, that sign has to be at least 6 by 4. So, that's another expense. So, just from a cost perspective, to submit an application to go through mural approval, it's almost like a $9,000-$10,000 per position.
Not to mention the fines that we paid after the mural was up.
And
we paid.
If we miss something, we have to go through the process again. That's yet another application and so on. We've done it 3 times. And we really have nobody guiding us through this process. As far as, well, you're putting up a mural here. Are you guys thinking of doing mural here? Let's submit an application for everywhere you want to have a mural for. I mean, we're just being gullible. We figured, hey, we submit an application for a mural. We're good to go to put a mural anywhere on our property. I mean, hell, we own the entire block.
So I'm sorry that you've had to go through this, but you are providing actually a great service by talking about this, because this is definitely the worst case scenario, right? That it's expensive, it's taking you very long.
Red tape-ish, if you will. We're putting up murals that are, I mean, these artists, when we submitted bios, we had at least 10 to 15 examples where these artists have put up murals on buildings that are 20 stories high. I mean, Tristan Eaton, he's got murals at Universal. He did Super Bowl. His stuff went into space. So I mean, these are world-renowned artists, yet the city doesn't see it for what it is. They just say, well, we gave you permission to put a mural here, but you can't put a mural there. You want a mural there? Submit another application. That's another 6-month process and another $10,000.
Needless to say, Sarah, we're just a little bit frustrated, and it's been a hassle. So yeah. I think that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. No,
let me also interject something. There's something interesting about, I think, what Alex said about the process of neighborhood notification and all that. The design review process in Glendale, which is basically to regulate and oversee private property redesigns, people's remodelings that are going to be visible from the public right-of-way. And when those types of design review projects come on the docket, the city does the notifying. And this is private property. These are houses we're talking about, in apartment buildings. The city takes care of the entire process of notification and the legalities of posting signs and all of that. And a mural approval process would be, in this situation, the way it is now, equivalent to, say, a remodeling. You're doing something to the exterior, and it's something people can see. And it doesn't make sense to me that requirement to notify people within a certain number of feet would fall on the owner, when in the design review process for remodelings, it falls on the city. They take responsibility.
Well, we have commercial property. It's along Victory, it's not residential. I mean, this is a commercial building. So believe me, we pay for everything 3 times. The city, of course, recommended a firm that would handle everything, from mailing lists, the 500-meter radius, to sending everything out, to put up a sign. So all I had to do is just let them know when the hearing would be, and they would put up a sign 10 days before. but the city did not pay for any of it. Believe me, I paid for everything.
So again, this really does seem like an excellent example of all the things that could possibly go wrong in trying to support murals within a community. And I think this will be, I mean, it might not be a whole lot of solace at this point after you've gone through everything you've been through, but this will definitely be information that we can use and take back to the conversations to figure out a better way to handle murals in Glendale. I think we only have about 8 minutes left of the meeting. Is that right, Jennifer? It's over at 8. So I want to make sure that we give anybody else an opportunity to speak up and you know, make suggestions, or if you have responses to what Ben and Alex have been talking about and thoughts about that, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, even before I heard Alex and Ben speak and I saw your approval process, I thought that's cumbersome. And we want to make it, like I said, artist friendly and business friendly. But separate from that, I know that we have to, you know, do quality control of murals, but I also think there'd be a good opportunity to create platforms where amateurs or other aspiring artists or muralists can participate, or where the community can participate. Like I've seen artists in Chicago go into schools and teach them how to do murals in their buildings, in their schools, or in the arts district, they offer workshops where kids or even business corporate teams come in for corporate building development, and they learn how to use, you know, spray cans and maybe, like, let's say an Obey kind of artist comes into town, you can create a whole kind of community participation and workshops and activities where people do their mini murals or projects like that, as a way to educate, as a way to inspire even future muralists coming out of Glendale.
I would like to add just one last thing. This whole process will require the city's various departments to coordinate with each other. And I've seen through experience that oftentimes doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen very well. And that's something that we'll have to focus in on and get them to be part of the process, rather than saying, oh no, I can't do that. Thank you.
Good point.
When the museum was getting our sign garden ready, which we're still in the process of doing, it's taking way longer. There was a lot of back and forth that I had to have with the city. It was in our property, it was in a hidden area of the museum, but they're still concerned that someone could see some of our signage from above the fence. So I know Alex have been going through to a very small degree. And I think that, you know, I think that it feels kind of stuck sometimes with Mona, because it's like, I really want to get neon as much out into the public sphere and make, you know, Glendale the place that I think Mona promised it would be when we moved, but it's very hard to jump through a lot of the different red tape. And I think that if we can find a better way of doing this, and also lead from a place of possibility rather than a place of fear. And think about, like, you know, we're talking about street art. If Banksy came to Glendale and did a mural, it would definitely be not mandated. But I would assume that, you know, in a few weeks, when people, you know, when the city government or whatever saw, oh, wow, this is a huge worldwide thing, that they, you know, wouldn't have to get Banksy to sign them or do this mural ordinance. So there's like all these elements where it's kind of like, how do you prove what a cultural asset murals are to a community? And also, how do you enable access? Because if we're talking about diversity, we want any business to be able to, in as little expense as possible, to empower the local community, and for students in their VAPA class to make a mural and not to have to become like public policy experts in order to do so.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
I just remembered the name of the film, by the way, the JR film, and JR was a collaborator with the Central Library here. The film is called Faces Places. And if any of you have not seen it, you absolutely should watch it. It's really moving and beautiful. And it's, you know, an artist's journey into various communities who really knew nothing. And the communities were completely transformed by what he did with public art. And it's a great opportunity, I think, to have films like this that show the power and communicative potential of murals to be seen by people. It's a good education tool.
Great film.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back for a second to something that Corey brought up, which I think is particularly interesting for the Neon Museum, because of course, I'm sure many of the signs come from commercial locations. And so there is a complex process, of course, of defining what art is. I mean, like an impossible process of defining what art is. But I do think that what needs to be in place is a process and a policy that is able to take into account the nuances of the location and siting of the work and the spirit within which it's being presented, so that it can't just be no signs, no commercial signs allowed, but no commercial signs for the purposes of advertising a business or drawing traffic to a particular business. That would be a different intention than preserving a neon sign from an old business that, you know, that is beautiful and historic in some way. So, but your comments really do raise this interesting question of what is art, and for better or worse, you know, that's a super complicated question to answer, and of course goes to the heart of what's the purpose of the murals, and at what point do you get to regulate the content of the murals or anything else that's installed in a public space. Jennifer, do you have anything that you want to say in wrapping things up? I mean, I feel like this has actually been very interesting and productive. I have a bunch of really interesting notes here that I can't wait to share with the team, and I think it'll really help us in moving this forward.
No, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone for your participation. This was a very, very helpful conversation as we shape this ordinance in the draft. If you have any questions, of course, please feel free to contact our office anytime. Our email address, the Commission's email address is artsandculture@glendaleca.gov, and we're happy to continue the conversation. But thank you so much for everyone who attended tonight.